Good morning. Welcome to Mornings with Zizi. I'm Zizi. Today I would like to discuss a very important uh, issue, and that is the concepts of unconditional love, love, and tough love. Of course, it's all from my perspective and from my life experiences. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. I come from Egypt, Cairo, Egypt, and at the time, of course, I was born, which is quite a while ago, it was mainly a very autocratic, authoritarian country with authoritarian parents. Everybody was authoritarian. Except that I was lucky because I was brought up mostly in the American College for Girls and then the American University. So all these things sort of helped me become a little bit less of what my culture was. But also made me also not as accepting of some of the things in it as I should have been. So let me just tell you, in our culture, in our family, the authoritarian approach was the main approach. So I would say, from a child's perspective, like me with a disability, I only saw very conditional love, and uh, so there was no room for this unconditional. Even when you hear people from all religions talking about God, God was very conditional in his love. He was very harsh and very punishing. So it sort of turns you off God, parents, any person in authority. So, I mean, I guess it would all be tough love, like Millikan talked about. So tough love in our culture here in West was only talked about in 1968 when Bill Milliken published his book Tough Love. So anyway, let me continue about the autocratic family, autocratic culture, and what it does to the individual. Like, I have to tell you a couple of stories because I don't know if my father was autocratic and cruel, or was he trying to exercise tough love, which was the common thing in our culture anyway. So nobody talked about love. It was, mainly the love was unconditional and tough. So, like when I was young, about maybe 9, 10 years old, I came home one day and I found my father and with a maid waiting for me at the bus at the door of the building, and the maid was carrying a chair. So I said, "Uh-oh, what's happening now?" So when I came down, my father said, "Well, the elevator is not working today." And we were living in on the fifth floor, very steep steps. So I started crying and saying, "How can I climb 5 stories with my heavy stainless steel braces and all that?" He said, "Oh, you'll do it. I know you can." It was just like the story of the train. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Yes, you can. So anyway, I was with tears in my eyes climbing one step and holding on the banister, and my maid had put the chair on any kind of place that we can put the chair, and he wanted me to rest. So on I went. It was a horrendous climb, very painful, very aggravating, and I hated him. I hated him for it, and I told him so. And then finally, when I made it to the fifth floor, my mother was standing there. I think she's the one who really had this unconditional love. She's the one, although she had no time to give love because she was so busy with what has to be done here and what does, all the little things that mothers scurry around the house doing. So anyway, I was so upset that I went directly to my room and I didn't want to have the ice cream she had prepared for me. And for many, many, many years, I hated my father for that one act. The other situation which I remember distinctly was when I graduated and had a job. My job was at the Ministry of Communities and Ministry of Scientific Research, just across the street from Garden City where we live. So it was a big dilemma because if I had to go to work, I can't walk and cross the street to go to work. I had to have someone take me there. At that time, my father had a very nice, car, and my brother had a very nice car, and none of them offered to take me over there, except that my father would give me every day money and say, "Take a taxi." Well, if you take a taxi from the stand and have them cross the street, you know what you're going to get, of course: insults or refusing to take you. So I was not only put forth in a situation where I had to fend myself with this disability, but also ask people to do something they probably wouldn't do even for whoever. So anyway, but I learned a few things and how to deal with people and how to ask them nicely and how to convince them that this is something they'd like to do. So this went on and on for years until my cousin, who was married, came to pick me up and take me to work, and then another friend of mine also came to take me from the house to so which really made me really mad and upset, and I didn't like that. When I was older, what happened was this kind of treatment, although it may be called tough love, I think it was a little bit too much. But because I had gone through it, particularly the one about the stairs, it became a metaphor for any time I was faced with a very, very difficult thing to do, or a chore, or exams. I always remembered it as a metaphor for success and for being able to surmount extreme difficulty. So in a way it helped me, but because I was trained in psychology, I was doing it. I don't know whether any other child would be able to convert this kind of treatment into something that's more meaningful and more positive. So you wonder if really, well, it has been shown in research that really, really bad, tough love, leads people to self-doubt, mistrust God, mistrust the father, mistrust the whole culture. But I would say that this kind of authoritarianism was mostly from the male-dominated society. And so it reflected on how I felt about God. I didn't trust God. I didn't really think He was good or merciful, but a very punishing God. First because of my plight with the handicap, and then again with the way everything was said about God, from priests, from sheikhs, from rabbis. God is a punishing God. You better behave, or else you're going to go to hell, you're going to do this. The teacher, even these days, a few years ago, told my grandson that I was going to go to hell because he wasn't baptized. So anyway, I'm just exploring that because I think up to this day there are still people who exercise this tough love to an extreme. And I would call that extreme when it goes to the point where the child hates the parent for doing it. Of course, later on, by reframing that as a very helpful, guiding, disciplinarian approach, it changed a bit my feeling about my father, whom I appreciated, and he did a lot for me and sacrificed a lot. However, in then a more democratic society where the male is not as dominant and the autocratic thing is not, then we can talk about unconditional love, we can talk about love, we can talk about tough love. I found myself that getting the unconditional love in an autocratic society was mainly from the females, who were also downtrodden and not treated as they should be. And then the tough love came from the males. Everybody was being tough on their kids, to the, like spare the rod and spoil the child kind of attitude. Children are to be seen and not heard. That whole thing, I went through that. And it makes you grow up with the feeling that you're not enough, you're not beautiful enough, you're not good enough, and it's not a very good feeling. So when I was having the experience in the American College for Girls, which was mostly American teachers and American administrators, The only thing that was really good was coming from the American side of teachers, not from the local teachers, unfortunately. But I learned what was unconditional love because this was a school for missionaries and they were all exercising, they walked their talk, let's put it this way. I saw a lot of unconditional love, a lot of concerned love, and some tough love. So I was able to recognize the difference between them. But at the same time, I also saw how different it is from how we were treated at home. So it created a conflict of values and of approach and of looking at life. But in my practice then, I found that children who were spoiled, who were given everything on a silver platter, and they were given lots of love, so unconditional that they could never be wronged, even if they did something really bad, like becoming on drugs or doing, promiscuous behaviors, or even when they were young, whatever they asked for, all they had to do was go into a tantrum and get what they want. So I wonder if, in order to bring children up by parents, especially those with disabilities, do we not want them to have to learn to be independent, to be a little tough, not to the extreme where we're cruel to them, but if we feel sorry for them, like if my father had felt sorry for me and let me he would do so much for me, I wouldn't have been able to be single-handedly supporting my family in Canada or anywhere else, or become independent. So in a way, if you can reframe very tough love, it's good. But I think if we can reach a sort of a moderate approach where we have unconditional love, which is very difficult unless it's a mother, because most love is very, very conditional. No matter where you are, it's conditional. The unconditional love you feel from God, if you have cured yourself from feeling hurt because of what happens to you, instead of feeling that it's God doing it to you, like they explain, you're being punished. But what would a 1-year-old person do when she's told that all these things are punishment for things that you did wrong? Well, what would you do wrong at the age of 1 to get polio and be paralyzed? So there was an extreme. I don't think I reconciled with God until much, much later in my life, when I really became, more of like a Sufi and looked at a direct relationship with God, and not through any kind of churches. I believed all religions were the same, all seeking one God, and love was the most important thing, understanding, and most of all, service. So my question to everyone who will hear me is, what do you think is the best approach for children, especially those who have disabilities? How can we fortify them so we can bring out that diamond that's so tough, indestructible in their personality? How can we bring that power within so that they can exercise it and defend themselves, and for other children to help them and be helpful? So I leave you with this question, and thank you so much for listening. I hope you can give me some feedback in your responses. Thank you and have a wonderful day. This is Zizi signing off. Bye. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.